Every year, I pick one wide receiver that best fits each of these 5 categories, and every year, thousands of fantasy players thank me in week 17. I keep trying to find a reason to fade Ja'Marr Chase. He's the best overall wide receiver on every board, the guy that you take at the 101 and never look back. But if that's true, why does it feel like I'm cheating? He led the league in everything: catches, yards, touchdowns, red zone work, and now they're giving him more slot snaps, more motion, more freedom. So what exactly am I looking for? A flaw that doesn't exist? He's the safest pick on the board, and I swear that's the part that I can't get past, because I've done this before. I've chased these can't miss guys who look perfect on paper and got smoked when the fantasy gods didn't care. I remember taking Cooper Kupp at the 103 the year after he won the Triple Crown. He was leading the league again until he wasn't. One rolled ankle and my team cratered. And now it's Chase. Everything says this should be easy, but that's what's messing with me, because the moment something starts to feel this easy, that's when I start asking myself, what am I not seeing? I want to take Chase and not think twice, lock in the reward, not the risk. But last year when I said that out loud, I took Tyreek Hill at the 103. And by October, I was praying for waiver wire miracles. That's what this feels like. Too clean, too easy, and I hate that. They're moving Chase around the formation, more slot, more motion, more free releases. It should be unfair. But I've seen unfair lose people titles. I've lived through it, because it's not just about Chase, it's about what happens if he doesn't hit. There's no safety net at the 101. You blow that pick, your draft's already chasing upside in round 2, praying that someone breaks out in round 8. That's the voice that won't shut up, and here's the part that keeps sliding through logic. Cincinnati has the hardest projected passing schedule in the NFL. Not top 5, not top 3, dead last. You don't just get Sauce, you get Surtain. You get a fantasy playoff run where almost every matchup looks like a trap. So now I'm picturing it. You're sitting in week 15, you took Chase as your anchor at the 101, and you're staring down a 13-point game while the guys that took Justin Jefferson get 35. And you realize you never even questioned it. You just clicked draft at ADP and assumed that it would work out. This doesn't feel like a player I'm analyzing. It feels like a test I'm being set up to fail, because I didn't stop and at least ask the right questions. The thing that finally broke me was realizing that I never actually doubted Ja'Marr Chase this offseason. I just didn't trust myself at the 101, because this isn't a boom or bust player I'm debating. This is a player that literally just led the league in everything, who won people weeks in fantasy last year. Chase is the best overall wide receiver in fantasy, and somehow I was acting like he still needed to prove it. There's no new breakout to predict, no system shift to project, no injury return to bet on. He's already there, and already looking at some of the Bengals' schedule, it's not like he's gonna unlock some secret risk that no one knows about. That's when it hit me. I'm not scared of Chase. I'm scared of being wrong when everyone else is right. Because if he hits and I faded him, that's my whole season, gone before October. I get it now. This whole time I wasn't scared of Chase. I was scared of looking stupid again for trusting the guy that everyone told me was safe at wide receiver, because I've done that before. Taken the chalk, taken the layup, and watched my team fall apart by week 5. But that's not this. Sometimes the guy who looks like the best overall wide receiver is the best overall wide receiver. So yeah, I still hate how easy it feels, but maybe the sharpest move is finally saying it out loud and hoping for the best. So we started with the best overall wide receiver, the guy you can trust no matter what, but we gotta talk about the riskiest pick on the board, because that name might actually break fantasy leagues or break your heart. Real quick, if you're serious about actually beating your friends this year, go to fantasyaccelerator.com or hit the first link below. You'll get instant access to my 2025 draft guide, rankings, sleepers, busts, cheat sheets, the same system over 12,000 players used last year to dominate their drafts and steamroll their entire league. But here's the deal, I'm keeping it limited so the real ones inside actually get my full attention. You'll see on the page how many spots are left, and when it's full, that's it. The price also goes up later this month no matter what, so now's the time to lock in. Garrett Wilson caught 101 balls last year. I started him every week, and I can't remember a single matchup that he won for me. I drafted him right next to Saquon. He was priced like an alpha, but when you needed 25, he gave you 12. Just enough to keep starting, never enough to actually matter. He's going at the 301. That's not some dart throw. That's where you're supposed to lock in someone you trust, someone who puts up 22 when your whole roster flatlines and saves you. And I keep staring at Garrett Wilson's name, telling myself that the setup looks good. New OC from Detroit, reunited with his college teammate Justin Fields. The coach saying that we're gonna get Garrett the ball as much as possible, and I wanna believe that that matters. Because last year he saw 153 targets, 5th most in the league, and that should mean something. But then you look deeper, 7.2 yards per target, 1.71 yards per route run, top 5 usage, bottom half in efficiency, and that's what messes with me. We already saw this version, volume that you can't bench, stats that really never spike, and a price tag that refuses to drop. Last year I just kept staring at him. I kept staring at the box scores, and I kept seeing the same number, 12. 12 points on like 12 targets. And yeah, 12 reasons I guess to put him back in your lineup the following week. That was the problem all year. It wasn't that he was bad, it was that he was just good enough to never bench. And just bad enough for him not to help you win a fantasy title. And then I saw this, Garrett Wilson ran 631 routes last year. That was wide receiver 2 in the entire NFL, but his yards per route run, like I said, 1.71. For a guy like this to fall outside the top 50 is absolutely crazy. That's not wide receiver 1 energy, that's kind of filler and background noise that's gonna make it into your flex spot, maybe, but kind of masquerading as a second round pick. And I wanted to blame the offense. I definitely wanted to blame Aaron Rodgers, but Wilson played in every game. He was top 5 in success rate versus man, zone, and press. So he's open a lot, but it's like these 12-yard digs on 2nd and 10. It's like these 8-yard outs with no yards after catch window. So I'm not convinced he's the problem, but your fantasy team might pay for it. The Jets just signed him to a big extension, $130 million. $90 million guaranteed, right as I keep questioning if he moves the needle. And that's what scares me, because we've seen this version and it's just a steady stream of floor performances. It never really spikes, which never really helps us win. The thing that finally snapped for me was realizing that 170 targets got you 1 game with 25 plus fantasy points. That's not a red flag, that's a reveal. Because that kind of usage just doesn't happen by accident. It's what you give to an offense's only functioning piece. Someone who can survive the mess and still move the chains. That's what cracked it wide open. I've been waiting for some next level breakout, some leap into the wide receiver 1 overall territory, or at least the wide receiver 1 overall tier, where the points finally start to match the pedigree. Well, what if I've been looking at it all backwards? What if the leap already happened and this is what it looks like? When a wide receiver gets fed like an alpha in an offense that never lets him score. I mean, he's been doing his job getting open, he's been showing up, and still the touchdowns just didn't come for this offense. The spike weeks never arrived, and yet Garrett Wilson still finished top 10 in total fantasy points somehow. And that's when it hit me. We're still treating him like he disappointed, but maybe the truth is he held his floor during an absolute collapse. And if this is his floor, maybe I've been asking the wrong questions this entire time. I thought last year was the collapse, that Garrett Wilson just didn't deliver. Too many games without spikes, too many weeks where 12 points just felt like mercy, but now I'm not so sure, because when you step back, it starts to look like something else. 170 targets, top 10 in total points, and we're still calling it a letdown. That wasn't a collapse, that was a floor, and that's kind of what's messing with me, because maybe the real risk is getting exactly what you paid for. He's not a bad pick, he held the line through a total meltdown, just signed a huge extension. He is that dude, but he's also the one wide receiver who might walk into your lineup every week and quietly take your whole season down with him. That's why he's the riskiest wide receiver pick on the board, not because he'll bust, because he might not, and that might be even worse. So yeah, Garrett Wilson is the riskiest, a star that you have to start, but what about this next guy on the list? He's not risky, he's a red flag. This is a guy who you do not want to draft at wide receiver in 2025. Every time I thought Jayden Reed hit, he ghosted me. 33 in week 1, 27 in week 4, and 19 in week 13. And I chased every single one, but he finishes the wide receiver 38 in points per game. And the truth is, I spent the entire season guessing, and it cost me more than 1 fantasy championships. I should be out on Jayden Reed, but I kept going back to those spike weeks, 33, 27, 19, like they meant more than they did, because when a guy like that goes off, you want to believe that it's happening. You want to believe that you already have the breakout. This year he's going in the 7th round, wide receiver 33, right next to players who never come off the field. But Reed, he ran a route on just 69% of Jordan Love's dropbacks, played on 63% of the snaps. He finished outside the top 50 in target share, yards per game, and first read rate. And the Packers, the same team that never gave him a full role, had to call his agent in the offseason to say, no, he's still our guy. So what are we doing here? If he's really the wide receiver 1, why does it feel like this offense is trying to hide him? I just kept coming back to this stat. Jayden Reed had 3 different weeks over 19 fantasy points and still finished as the wide receiver 38. That's not just a letdown, that's how you get baited. You remember the ceiling, but you forget the floor. But the other 12 games, he averaged 5.7 points per game. That's not a breakout, that's a complete trap. And one that I fell for at least 3 times. And I know what you're gonna say when you defend him in the comments, he's locked into the slot, he just needs more volume, most efficient receiver on the team, just looking for opportunities. But let's look closer. He didn't run more than 67% of the routes in over half of his games. He didn't top 5 targets in 9 of his final 12 games. He wasn't on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. That's not a lock, that's a role player we were pretending was featured. And now the setup is even worse. Christian Watson's ACL recovery timeline is still murky, but Romeo Doubs, he's not going anywhere. Doubs led all Packers receivers in route rate target share, and first read rate. People forget that he was kind of Jordan Love's go-to guy, at least when he was healthy. And now they draft Matthew Golden, who's already repping 2 wide receiver sets, already getting the exact routes that Reed never got for us last year. And they're not even calling him a slot-only guy. So who loses snaps if the Packers go run heavy again? Reed looked like a breakout. He had spike weeks, all the buzz, but really just the highlights from those few games. The usage was extremely fragile, the routes were capped, and the role was never secure. So if Golden is kind of like that vertical slot and Dobbs is the rock, Reed's not a riser. He's a bench piece that we've got burned by once and still haven't fully let go. The moment that snapped it into focus for me, they already ran the experiment. Reed got the motion, the red zone work, and the jet plays. For 6 straight games, he was the guy. He wasn't buried, he wasn't waiting. They gave him a runway, and the production didn't spike. It stayed pretty flat, efficient, but flat. Wide receiver 38 capped, and that's when it hit me. We kept talking about what might happen if Reed gets more work, but we already saw it. It wasn't just a sample size problem. It was 6 weeks of elevated usage, and it didn't change who he was in the offense. He was consistent, he was productive, but never really tilted anything for you in fantasy. And if all of that, the manufactured looks, the motion, the slot usage, realistically just trying to get him in good matchups, didn't bring him ahead of Dobbs, we have some big problems here. Because maybe we're not waiting on a breakout, maybe we're just afraid to admit that the ceiling already showed its head, and it wasn't enough to justify this type of draft cost. So I'm not guessing this year, not on routes, not on rolls, not on Jayden Reed, because I already lived this loop once, chasing the 30-point games, hoping that the breakouts stick, and every time I leaned in, he vanished. I know what the stats say. He was efficient. I know the touchdowns made it feel real, but I also know what it felt like to start him. The disappearing acts, the snap counts, the just needs more volume arguments that never cashed in. After 6 straight games where the team actually gave him the runway, the motion, the red zones, the routes, like everything we're looking for, he still didn't tilt a single matchup for us. So I'm done pretending there's more here than there actually is, and what we already saw. Jayden Reed is officially on my do not draft list, not because he's a bust, because I'm not burning another draft pick chasing highlights that don't hold up when it actually matters for me. Let someone else guess. I've seen enough. I'm out. So Jayden Reed's on the do not draft list, a player that might fool you at least once, probably twice throughout the season, but we're flipping the script on this next guy. We're talking about my sleeper wide receiver that you should be targeting. I keep hovering over Darnell Mooney in round 8, third and deep ball receptions, nearly 1,000 yards. No new competition, a deep ball offense with real arm talent behind center. If this is my #1 wide receiver sleeper, why do I still feel like I'm trying to talk myself into it? He's going in round 8, and if all you looked at was the box score, 64 catches, nearly 1,000 yards, it makes perfect sense. Wide receiver 31 finish, played in 16 games, rare deep ball skills, but that's not what makes him a sleeper. He absolutely nuked Tampa twice. Over 80 yards in both games, scored twice. The kind of plays that flip matchups on its head in fantasy and make you believe that this guy's finally breaking through. And then Penix steps in and everything stalls out. You have the same role, the same routes, but we kind of lose the result. And suddenly it's not about whether he can produce, it's whether you can trust when it's coming. That's the dilemma. Are you drafting Mooney for what he just did or for the version that you think he could be? And that's the part that keeps circling in my head because I've done this before. I've seen the markers, the volume, the price tag, and I convince myself it's all lining up for something. Sometimes it hits, but most of the time I'm stuck with a guy that I can't start and I can't really drop either. I'm just waiting for one more boom week that never comes so I can sell high. But Mooney feels different because this time the volume wasn't fake. 107 targets, over 1,300 air yards, and the man ran 503 routes last year. That's top 30 in the league. It wasn't a random spike. He was a part of the offense every week, every snap. And the deep roll wasn't theoretical either. 24 deep targets, that's top 5 in the league. He averaged 15.5 yards per reception. That was 13th best. He won routes against man, he stayed healthy, and for the first time in years, his path wasn't blocked. There was no DJ Moore, no rookie first rounder that slotted ahead of him. So yeah, maybe I'm doing it again, but this time I'm not chasing a flash. I'm betting on timing, and for a wide receiver 5 in round 8, I'll take that swing. The thing that finally hit me was realizing that he didn't just pop off in a few games. He held that role for 16 straight weeks. No collapse, no in-season benching, no fade really when a rookie quarterback took over in terms of volume. Just a 92.4% snap share in a brand new offense while leading the team in targets, air yards, and total routes for most of the year. And nothing's changed. They didn't draft another wideout. They didn't sign a target earner. They just fully committed to their young quarterback with a better deep ball and left Mooney's path untouched. This wasn't a splash signing or like a spike stretch, this is a full season starter. Top 10 in deep targets, still being drafted outside the top 50 of wide receivers right now. And that's when it clicked. Maybe for the first time in years, Mooney doesn't need perfect usage to matter. He just needs one throw per game from the guy who can finally get it there. But I know what this looks like. Another deep threat, another maybe, another guy that I'm supposed to squint at in round 8 and say, this could be the year. But when I actually slow down, it's not a maybe. He's not a stash. He's definitely not a what if. He's a guy that's already done it and nobody's talking about him. So maybe that's the shift. I'm not taking Darnell Mooney because I'm desperate for a breakout. I'm taking him because he already did the hardest part and no one seemed to care. So yeah, I'm going to be the one that's trying to draft him as much as possible because this isn't a dart throw. At least for right now, he's my #1 wide receiver sleeper, and it's time I stopped pretending that I didn't believe that. Look, Mooney has a shoulder injury that will hold him out of most of camp, and it's unsure if it's the same shoulder that he injured late last season, so keep an eye on that. But this last wide receiver, he's not sneaky, he's not quiet, he's the boldest pick you can make in 2025 and a potential league winner if you've got the stones. But if you're not ready for the full draft kit yet, you can still get my top 150 rankings totally free at top150free.com. It's the exact list that I'm using in every draft this year, and odds are at least one of your league mates already has it. But if they do and you don't, you'll feel it by round 3. So grab it now, takes 30 seconds, might save your whole draft. I remember drafting Rashee Rice and thinking this is the guy that Mahomes trusts now. 3 games in, thinking that I found a league winner, only to watch it all disappear. He's healthy again, back to full go, but now he's staring down likely a multi-game suspension for that reckless driving charge. 30 days of jail time, 5 years probation. But let's not kid ourselves, Rice is still very relevant for fantasy. He may just be the boldest high upside gamble on the entire board. I'm sitting there at pick 45 and Rice is just staring at me. The part of your draft that you're supposed to be feeling safe, confident, like you're locking in your cornerstone pieces. But I don't feel that. I've seen what he did. I've seen how fast it can flip. From a rookie working in behind MVS to the guy Mahomes was building the entire Chiefs offense around. And just when it looked like he fully arrived, it ended. Torn LCL, torn PCL, hamstring tendon repair, all in the same knee. And then came these suspension rumors. His ADP is dropping to pick 40 or so, and it's probably going to keep falling into the 50s before long. He's dropped all the way to wide receiver 20, but still the first Chief on the board around DK Metcalf, but still ahead of guys like Zay Flowers. It's like we all wanted to believe those first 3 games last year that they were all that mattered going forward, but this changes things a little bit with the suspension, because if this is supposed to feel like a layup, why do I still feel like I'm guessing here? I keep circling back to that stretch that made us believe. 24 catches, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, all in just 3 games. The red zone usage, the yards after catch dominance, third down trust, it all pointed towards one thing. This wasn't a gadget guy anymore. He was the offense. From week 12 to week 14, Rice averaged a 33.8% target share and a 3.27 yards per route run, second only to Jamar Chase. And he did it by living underneath. 4.4 yards of separation, that is completely elite, but only a 6.1 ADOT. He made his money turning short throws into huge gains, and that's kind of where the doubt creeps back in, because if your entire value is tied to quickness, burst, short area leverage, can you really come back from a triple tendon knee surgery and still be the same? We want to believe he's cleared means he's fine, but how many guys actually are? Especially in this offense. Kansas City faces the second toughest schedule against wide receivers this year, and with Worthy on the roster and Andy Reid saying that they'll use him in a variety of ways, you can't just pencil in Rice for that same type of volume that we saw. But yeah, Worthy's still not going off the board until like pick 46 or so you got to make a decision here. But that's what messes with me, because if he's still the locked in wide receiver 1 in this offense, then he's a home run. But if not, and we're just downplaying some of these other things that are different now, we could be in trouble. And the thing that finally hit me was realizing that we never actually moved him down. Not after the injury, not after the off-field questions, not after months of silence. He was going exactly where we left off, like none of it happened, but that won't last. And maybe that's the answer, because the last time we saw him fully healthy, fully unleashed, he wasn't emerging, he was delivering. Over 21 PPR points per game, nearly 34% of the team's targets. Wide receiver 1 level output in just 3 starts. That's not upside, that's proof of concept, and the scheme hasn't changed. Mahomes' average depth of target has still dropped in 3 straight seasons. The Chiefs are still built on these like timing routes, motion looks, and short area separation. And Rice is still running 50% of his routes out of the slot. Not Worthy. So maybe this isn't about projecting anymore. Maybe it's about trying to price in risk for a guy who's already shown us what happens when he's completely right. And this year, when he's out there, even if it's not until like week 5, he's still the Mahomes guy you want. I've run through every reason to stay away. The knee, the noise, the target competition, now the suspension looming to start the season. And look, it's easy to say, I'll just wait and take him later if he drops into the 50s, the 60s. That's where league winners come from, because every time I try and move on, I keep coming back to this same truth. I've seen what Rice looks like when he hits, and it looks like a wide receiver dropping 21 points a game attached to Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, maybe the risk is real. Maybe the burst isn't all the way back. Maybe he misses the first month of the season, so I'm not calling him safe, but I'm not letting fear take him off my board either. If I can get that version of Rashee Rice for 10 weeks, he's the boldest pick you can make in 2025, but I'm drafting him again, and I'm letting it ride.